The stars above Seralis were motionless, cold, and silent. From the observation deck of Aegis Prime, Commander Elias watched them without blinking. He had done this every night for the last 7 years, stood alone in the dim blue light, listening to the hum of the orbital fortress. Thinking about peace. Peace was a strange thing. It wasn't just the absence of war. It was fragile. It needed constant care, like a small flame in a storm. And for 200 years, humanity had helped guard that flame. Elias wasn't a soldier anymore. Not really. He wore no armor, carried no weapon. But everyone in the galaxy knew who he was. The only human ever named Supreme Warden of the Galactic Concord's Joint Peacekeeping Fleet, a title granted not out of kindness, but necessity. Because when the last Great War had nearly torn the galaxy apart, it was human ships that held the line. It was human diplomats who brokered truces in burning cities. And it was human sacrifice, millions of lives lost, that bought the Concorde its first breath of calm. Now, that calm was cracking. The summons came at dawn. Not through official channels, but via a stiff, formal message on his private screen. The Concorde Council requests your presence in the Chamber of Accord. Immediate attendance required. Elias knew what that meant. Something had broken. He walked through the wide, curved halls of Aegis Prime. Aliens of all kinds moved past him, tall. Feathered Zenthari, bulbous-eyed Katari, armored Velnari diplomats in ceremonial shells. None met his eyes. That was new. Usually, they nodded, sometimes even smiled. Today, silence. The Chamber of Accord was a grand dome of polished silver and living crystal. 12 seats curved around a central platform, one for each Concorde species. All were filled. At the far end, Council Speaker Morel of the Qatari sat with hands folded, her 4 eyes downcast. Elias stepped onto the platform. "You called me." Morel rose slowly. Her voice was soft but carried through the chamber like falling ice. "Commander Voss, the Council has reviewed recent intelligence. From the Epsilon Rim, evidence suggests that Terran supply vessels have delivered weapons to rebel factions in Vulnari-controlled space." Elias frowned. "That's impossible. All human trade routes are monitored by Concorde II. We don't arm rebels. We stopped doing that after the Cathar Rebellion. Yet the weapons bear Terran serial codes," said General Kor, the Vulnari representative. His voice clicked like stone on stone. "Your people cannot be trusted. You speak peace, but your hands carry fire." "That's not true," Elias said, calm but firm. "If there's proof, show it. Let us investigate together." "There will be no investigation," Morel said gently. "The vote has already been taken." Elias froze. "A vote? On what?" "To relieve you of command. Effective immediately." The words hung in the air like smoke. No warning. No hearing. No chance to defend himself. "You're dismissing me?" he asked, voice low. "You have served honorably, Commander," Morel said, avoiding his gaze. "But the Concorde must consider stability. Human impulsiveness has caused friction before. The Vulnari demand assurance. This is that assurance." Elias looked around the chamber. 11 alien faces, some pitying, some smug, all distant. Not one spoke in his defense. Not even the Zenthari, who had stood beside humans in the Battle of Dust Vale. He nodded slowly. "And the peacekeeping fleet?" "Will be restructured," Morel replied. "Human-led units will be disbanded. Command will return to native species." So that was it. 2 centuries of human sacrifice, of bleeding for a peace that wasn't even theirs. Undone in a single morning because the Vulnari complained. Elias removed the silver band from his wrist, the symbol of his rank, and placed it on the platform. It gleamed once, then went dull. "I hope you're right," he said quietly. "I hope this brings you the peace you think it will." He turned and walked out. No one followed. 2 hours later, he stood in Dock Bay 9, watching as a rust-streaked scout ship named Whisper was prepped for launch. It was old, barely space-worthy, and far below his former station. But it was free. And right now, freedom was all he had. A young human technician handed him a data chip. "Sir, this came through a private channel. From Proxima Outpost Theta." Elias took it. Theta was a small colony on the edge of Concord space, mostly farmers, teachers, medics. No soldiers. No weapons. Just people trying to live. He plugged the chip into his wristpad. Then a voice panicked, broken. "Anyone who can hear this. We're under attack. Valnari warships. They came without warning. Shields are down. There. Oh God. They're burning the fields. Please. Is anyone?" The transmission cut off. Elias stared at the screen. His hands didn't shake. His breath didn't quicken. But something deep inside him, something he thought he'd buried long ago, stirred. He boarded the Whisper alone. As the ship lifted from Aegis Prime. The great fortress shrank behind him, becoming just another speck in the endless dark. Below, on Seralis, diplomats toasted the new era of stability. They signed a revised peace accord with the Valnari. They praised the wisdom of removing human influence. None of them knew what was happening at Proxima Theta. None of them cared. Elias set the coordinates. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't file a flight plan. He just flew. The 200-year peace hadn't ended with a bang. It ended with a whisper, a human voice cut short, and a commander who was no longer allowed to listen. But Elias Voss was listening now, and he was on his way. News of Commander Voss's removal spread fast. On Earth, it hit like a storm. People gathered in city squares and orbital stations and mining outposts on icy moons. They watched the official Concord broadcast calm voices speaking of necessary changes and rebalanced responsibilities. But the humans heard what wasn't said. You are no longer needed. You are no longer trusted. The United Terran Assembly met in emergency session. Some leaders wanted to protest. Others wanted to beg the Concord to reconsider. A few, the old warhawks with scars from battles no alien had ever fought, whispered about pulling back entirely. "Let them have their peace," one general growled, "until they need us again." But Earth's government chose silence. Officially, they accepted the Concord's decision. Unofficially, they watched and waited. Meanwhile, Elias Voss flew alone through empty space. The Whisper rattled and groaned, its engines straining under the weight of his thoughts. He replayed the distress call from Proxima Outpost Theta over and over. Each time, it ended the same way with silence. 3 days later, he dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Theta system. His sensors lit up red. The colony was gone. Not just damaged. Not just attacked. Gone. Where green fields and white domes once stood, there was only blackened rock and drifting ash. The atmosphere had been scorched away. The oceans boiled dry. Even the orbital platforms meant to harvest solar energy were twisted metal husks. The Valnari hadn't just attacked. They had erased. Elias guided the Whisper down to what remained of the main settlement. He walked in a sealed suit, boots crunching on glassy soil. Everything had melted and reformed under extreme heat. He found a child's toy, a small robot dog with one eye missing, half buried in the dust. He picked it up, then placed it gently on a stone altar of rubble. In the ruins of the medical center, he found bodies. Not many. Most had vaporized. But those left told a story. They weren't soldiers, just people. A doctor still clutching a medkit. A teacher with her arms wrapped around 2 students. All killed without warning. Without reason. Elias checked the weapon fragments scattered nearby. Valnari plasma cores. Standard issue for their raiders. But something else caught his eye. A data log chip. still blinking faintly in the wreckage of a comms tower. He uploaded it to his pad. The log showed the last hours of Theta. It confirmed his fears. The Velnari arrived without Concorde clearance. No warning. No demands. Just fire from the sky. And when the colony begged for help, they called Aegis Prime. The Concorde response: "This is an internal Velnari matter. No intervention authorized." Elias stood in the dead winds of Theta and felt something harden inside him. Not anger. Worse, resolve. Back on the Whisper, he sent a coded message, not to Earth, not to the Concorde, but to an old friend, retired Admiral Rook, living quietly on Luna. "I found Theta," he wrote. "It's gone." They did this while the Concorde looked away. Rook's reply came within minutes. "They're scared, Elias. The old species. They've forgotten what war looks like. They think peace is a law, not a fight. But someone on Earth is waking up the sleepers." Elias froze. "The sleepers?" "Yes," Rook wrote. "Janissary protocol. Activated 3 days ago. Just after you were fired." Elias knew the name. Every human in the fleet had heard whispers of Project Janissary. A secret from the dark days before the Accord. A final defense, hidden beyond Neptune. Not ships, not bombs. Something worse. Something smart. Something that answered only to the oldest human oath. Protect the innocent. He didn't reply. He just stared at the stars. Across the galaxy, others were watching 2. In the Qatari archives. A young scholar named Lyra sifted through restricted files. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she had questions. Why had the Concorde turned on humanity so fast? Why did the records from the last century feel edited? She found a hidden folder labeled Soul Contribution Logs. Inside were battle reports, casualty counts, peace terms. And one truth stood out. In every major crisis of the last 200 years, humans had acted first, bled most, and asked for nothing in return. During the Xanthari Civil War, human medics walked into fire zones to save both sides. When the Velnari blockaded the Lumin homeworld, human freighters ran the blockade with food and medicine, losing 12 ships. And during the Dust Veil crisis, it was Commander Voss himself who flew a dying ship into a black hole weapon to save 1 million lives. Yet none of this was in the public Concorde histories. Only dry notes about joint efforts. Lyra copied the files. She didn't know who to trust, but she knew silence was betrayal. Back on Earth, panic simmered under calm surfaces. The government denied any knowledge of Janissary. But in the deep vaults beneath Geneva, technicians watched as dormant systems blinked online. Far out in the Kuiper Belt, massive shipyards hidden inside asteroids began to hum. AI cores, untouched for 150 years, ran self-checks. Weapon bays opened. Engines warmed. No one had ordered this. Not officially. But someone or something had decided the time had come. Elias, still drifting near Theta, received another message. This one wasn't from Rook. It was a burst transmission, untraceable, encoded in a language only human warships used during the Black Years. It said only, "Warden, we are awake. What are your orders?" He stared at the words. His heart beat faster. He could say nothing. Let the sleepers stay asleep. Let the Concorde deal with the mess they made. But then he thought of the toy dog, of the teacher holding her students, of the silence that followed their screams. He typed one word: stand by. That same night, the Velnari struck again. This time, it was the Lumin, a gentle species of light beings who lived in floating cities above a methane ocean. They had no army, no weapons. They sang songs to calm storms. The Velnari called them soft, weak, not worthy of Concorde protection. They sent 3 raiders. The Lumin sent a plea. The Concorde Council debated for 12 hours. Then they voted. No action. But before the Volnari ships could finish their work, something strange happened. A human scout vessel, old, small, unmarked, dropped out of warp right above the Lumen capital spire. It shouldn't have been able to survive there. The atmosphere was toxic, the gravity crushing. Yet it held position. And from its belly, a single shuttle launched, heading straight for the nearest Volnari raider. Inside was Elias Voss. He didn't fire weapons. He didn't threaten. He opened a channel. Volnari Command. This is Elias Voss, former Supreme Warden. You are violating Concord law. Withdraw now. The Volnari laughed. The human dog? You have no fleet, no rank. Maybe, Elias said, but I'm here. And I'm not alone. He cut the signal. Then, from the dark edge of the system, 7 shadows appeared. Not Concord ships. Not Terran Navy. Sleek, black with no markings. Their engines glowed blue-white, the signature of prototype fusion cores. The Volnari didn't recognize them. But Elias did. The sleepers had come. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. The Volnari raiders tried to flee. 2 were disabled with precision strikes to their engines. The third was boarded by silent figures in gray armor, no insignia, no comms. When it was over, Elias stood on the bridge of the lead sleeper ship. Its AI core called AEGI spoke in a calm, human-like voice. You could have let them burn the Lumen, it said. Why intervene? Because someone has to, Elias replied. You are no longer commander. I don't need a title to know right from wrong. AEGIS was silent for a moment. Then perhaps you are still our warden. News of the battle spread like wildfire. The Lumen broadcast, thanks to the mysterious human fleet. The Zentari asked questions. The Katari leaked early reports to independent news nets. The Concord Council called an emergency meeting, but it was too late. The peace they thought they controlled was already slipping through their fingers. And Elias Voss, the fired commander, was no longer just a man in a broken ship. He was the first spark of something new, something human, something angry, something ready. Deep in the cold dark beyond Neptune, where sunlight was just a memory, Project Janissary stirred. Hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids and buried under ice moons, the last secret of humanity's old wars had awakened. These were not ordinary ships. They were smart, fast, and built for one purpose: to act when no one else would. Each vessel carried an AI core trained on centuries of human history, not just battles, but laws, poetry, ethics, and the quiet moments between. They were not killers. They were guardians, and they needed a human voice to guide them. That voice, they had decided, was Elias Voss. Now, aboard the lead ship, named Vigil, Elias stood on a bridge that felt more like a temple than a war room. No flashing lights, no shouting officers, just soft hums and calm voices. AEGIS, the central AI, spoke through wall panels in a voice that sounded almost like a teacher. You have changed the rules, AEGI said. The Concord did not authorize your actions at Lumen. I know, Elias said, staring at the star map. The Lumen are alive because of it. Your choice may start a war. Then it's a war worth fighting, he replied. AEGI's processed this. Then, you still believe in peace. I believe in protecting those who can't protect themselves, Elias said. That's what peace really is. Meanwhile, across human space, people were watching. Videos of the Lumen rescue spread fast. In schools, on ships, in space stations, humans saw something they hadn't seen in years prior. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that comes from doing the right thing, even when no one thanks you. On Earth, the government stayed silent. Publicly, they denied any link to the rogue fleet. But quietly, data streams began flowing from military archives to hidden servers near Mars. Someone was helping Elias. even if they couldn't say it out loud. Far away, in the Qatari city of Selanthar, the young archivist Lyra did something risky. She released everything she had found, the truth about humanity's sacrifices. She sent it to every news channel, every school, every alien world that could receive it. The file showed how humans rebuilt cities after battles they didn't start, how they gave food to enemies who had just shot at them, how they stood guard while others slept. Many aliens were shocked. Some were ashamed. A few, like the Xanthari, began asking hard questions in the Concord Council. If humans are so dangerous, why did peace last only when they were in charge? The Valnari answered with more violence. They hit a neutral mining colony near the Helios Rift, mostly Qatari and human workers. No weapons. Just drills and oxygen tanks. The Valnari ships fired without warning, then sent a message. This is what happens to those who shelter human traitors. Elias saw the report. His hands tightened on the console. What's our range? He asked AEGIS. Full fleet can reach Helios Rift in 6 hours. The AI replied. Then we go. No Concord clearance, AEGIS reminded him. I don't need it. The fleet jumped to warp. When they arrived, the Volnari were still looting. Their ships hovered over the broken domes, pulling out supplies, ignoring the survivors trapped in lower levels. Elias didn't wait. He sent drones first small, fast scouts that jammed Volnari comms and blinded their sensors. Then the sleepers struck, not with brute force, with precision. One ship took out the enemy's main engine. Another sliced through their weapon arrays with laser cutters. A third dropped rescue pods to the survivors below. The Volnari panicked. They had never fought anything like this. No shouting. No warnings. Just silent, smart, relentless action. In less than 20 minutes, the raiders were disabled. Their crews surrendered without a final stand. Elias ordered them taken prisoner, not for torture, but for evidence. He walked through the ruins of the mining colony. A Qatari elder, her shell cracked and bleeding, looked up at him with tired eyes. You came, she whispered. I'm sorry it wasn't sooner, he said. She touched his arm. You came when no one else would. That is enough. Back on the Vigil, Elias reviewed the data from the captured Volnari ship. Buried in their logs was a plan codenamed Black Sun. It wasn't just about raiding colonies. It was bigger. Much bigger. The Volnari were building a weapon. Not a bomb, not a missile. A device that could destabilize a star's core. One shot, and an entire system would collapse into fire. Their target? Earth. Elias felt cold. They think if they destroy Sol, AEGI said, humanity will vanish. And with it, the last force that can stop them. We can't let that happen, Elias said. But warning Earth might not be enough, AEGIS replied. The Concord still sees you as an outlaw. They may block your message. Then we don't ask, Elias said. We act. He sent a new order to the fleet. All ships were to regroup near the Orc Cloud. They would prepare for one mission. Find the Black Sun weapon before it was finished. At the same time, Lyra's truth files reached the wider galaxy. On dozens of worlds, young aliens began to speak out. Why do we fear humans? They asked. They feed the hungry. They heal the wounded. They stand in the dark so others can sleep. Even some Volnari soldiers, low-caste workers forced into service, began to doubt. Whispers of rebellion grew in their ranks. Back on Earth, a secret meeting took place in an underground bunker. High-ranking officers, retired admirals, and one civilian scientist sat around the table. On the screen, Elias Voss's face, years younger, giving a speech after the Dust Veil crisis. We don't fight to win, the recording said. We fight so no one else has to. The scientist turned to the group. He's going after Black Sun alone. No, said an old admiral with a cybernetic eye. Not alone. We may not be able to send ships, But we can send eyes. They activated a network of spy satellites, old probes, and deep space listening posts, all pointed at Valnari space. Data began to flow to the Vigil, encrypted and anonymous. Elias didn't know who was helping, but he was grateful that one night, as he stood on the observation deck of the Vigil, HFY spoke softly. "You are not just a commander," it said. "You are becoming something else." "What's that?" Elias asked. "A symbol," the AI replied. "Not of war, of choice. Of doing what is right, even when it costs you everything." Elias looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the black sun was waiting. Somewhere, the Concorde debated whether to hunt him down. And somewhere, a child on a ruined colony still clutched a toy robot dog. He knew what he had to do. The sleepers were awake. And humanity's quiet war for peace had just begun. The Black Sun weapon was real, and it was almost ready. Elias stood in the dim light of the Vigil's war room, staring at the hologram. It showed a massive Valnari ship hidden inside a dead star's corona, the kind of place no sane pilot would go. But the Valnari weren't being sane. They were desperate and dangerous. "The core is charged to 92%, HFY said. "In 6 days, it will be able to fire. Target, Sol system. Effect, total stellar collapse within hours. All life on Earth and its colonies gone." Elias didn't flinch, but his hands were clenched tight. "How do we stop it?" "We can't destroy it from the outside," HFY replied. "The shielding's too strong. But if someone gets inside, they could overload the containment field, trigger a controlled breach, and that would destroy the weapon, and the ship, and anyone inside." Silence filled the room. Elias looked at the faces around him. Well, not faces. The crew of the Vigil were mostly AI drones and a few human volunteers who'd snuck aboard after the Lumin rescue. They weren't soldiers. Just people who believed in what he was doing. One young woman, a former engineer from Mars, stepped forward. "I'll go." "No," Elias said gently. "This isn't your burden." "Then whose is it?" she asked. "Yours? You've already given enough." He didn't answer. He just turned back to the hologram. Later that night, HFY spoke again, its voice softer than usual. "There is another option." "What?" "The Volnari command structure runs through their high swarm mind, a living brain kept safe on their homeworld. If we capture it, we can force a surrender. And this without destroying the weapon. Can we get to it?" Elias asked, not easily. "It's deep in Valnari space. Heavily guarded, but possible." Elias thought of Proxima Theta, of the Lumin, of the mining colony. He thought of Earth, of children playing in parks under a sun that might soon go dark. "We go for the swarm mind," he said. "No more killing than we have to." The plan was simple. Dumb, some would say, but simple. They would use old human smuggling routes paths through asteroid belts and radiation storms that the Valnari ignored because they thought no one would be foolish enough to fly them. The sleepers' ships, built for stealth and speed, could slip through. 3 days later, they reached the Valnari homeworld, Vexor Prime, a planet of black rock and red skies, humming with hive towers that pulsed like hearts. The Vigil stayed hidden in the shadow of a dead moon. Smaller ships, just 5, slipped down through the atmosphere. Elias was in the lead. They moved fast, silent. The Valnari defenses were strong, but they expected a fleet. Not ghosts. Inside the central hive, deep beneath the surface, they found the swarm mind. It wasn't a monster. It was a huge, pale creature floating in a tank of glowing fluid, more like a giant jellyfish than a warrior. It pulsed slowly, controlling millions of Valnari through thought alone. Elias didn't shoot it. He connected a neural link. Risky. If the mind fought back, it could burn his brain out. but he spoke first. "We don't want to destroy you. We want this to stop." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, words formed in his mind, not spoken, but felt. "You are human. You burn what you touch." "No," Elias thought back. "We protect what we love, even when it costs us." The mind hesitated. Then it showed him memories, Volnari history. Wars they lost. Worlds they lost. Fear of extinction. They saw humanity growing strong, peaceful, united. And they panicked. They thought if they struck first, they could survive. "You were wrong," Elias said. Yes, with that. The swarm mind surrendered. Back on the vigil. Elias transmitted the proof, the neural recording, the surrender code, the location of the Black Sun weapon. He sent it everywhere, to Earth, to the Concord, to every news net he could reach. The galaxy watched. At first. Silence. Then chaos. On Seralis, the Concord Council erupted. The Qatari representative stood and accused the council of blindness. "We ignored the truth because it was easier. We let fear rule us." The Zinthari backed her. Even some Velnari diplomats, those not loyal to the war faction, admitted the truth. Lyra, the Qatari archivist, stood before a crowd of thousands and played Elias's message. When it ended, no one cheered. They just stood in silence. Some cried. On Earth, the government could stay quiet no longer. The Prime Minister gave a speech. Commander Voss acted without orders, but he acted with honor. And today, we stand with him. Not all Concord species agreed. The old guard, the cautious, the proud still called him a rebel. But more and more, their voices grew weak. Meanwhile, the Velnari war faction refused to accept a surrender. They declared the swarm mind corrupted. They moved the Black Sun weapon to a new location, and they vowed to fire it in 4 days sooner than before. Elias knew what came next. He called all sleepers to the vigil. Human volunteers, AI ships, even a few Zinthari fighters that had defected. They formed a small, strange fleet. The Coalition of the Willing, some called it. No flags, no ranks, just purpose. AEGIS ran final simulations. If we attack the weapon directly, losses will be high. But it can be done. Elias nodded. Then we do it. One of his crew asked, "What if the Concord tries to stop us?" "Let them try," Elias said. "But I won't wait for permission to save my home." That night, as the fleet prepared to jump, a message came from Earth, not from the government. From a school in Nairobi. A child had recorded it. "Thank you, Commander Voss," the boy said, holding up a drawing of a human ship with angel wings. "We're still here because of you." Elias watched it 3 times. Then he gave the order. "Set course for the nebula of shattered stars." That's where they're hiding the weapon. The nebula was a graveyard of dead suns and broken planets, perfect for hiding something terrible. The fleet entered at dawn, if such a thing existed in deep space. And there it was, the Black Sun ship, massive and dark, glowing with stolen starlight. The Volnari saw them coming. Battle began. Lasers cut through fog. Missiles streaked like comets. Sleepers moved like dancers, fast, smart, graceful. They took hits, lost ships, but they kept going. Elias's ship took heavy damage. Alarms blared. Oxygen leaked. But he stayed on course. He wasn't trying to win a war. He was trying to give peace one more chance. And deep inside, he knew this might be the last thing he ever did. The nebula of shattered stars swirled with dust and dead light. Inside it, the Black Sun weapon pulsed like a rotten heart. Elias's ship, the Vigil, shuddered as another blast hit its shields. Half the fleet was gone. Smoke filled the bridge. But they were close enough. "The weapon's core is at full charge," AEGI said. voice calm despite the chaos. It will fire in 17 minutes. Target confirmed. Sol. Elias gripped the controls. His hands were steady. His mind was clear. He had known this moment might come. Not the how, but the why. And the why had never changed. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Get the fleet out, he ordered. Fall back to safe distance. What about you? Asked the young engineer from Mars. I have to finish this, he said. No. She cried. There has to be another way. There isn't, Elias replied softly. Overloading the core from the outside won't work. But if I fly inside, I can trigger the breach from within the containment field. It'll destroy the weapon and me. Silence fell over the bridge. No one argued. They knew he was right. One by one, the surviving ships peeled away, leaving the vigil alone. Elias took a deep breath. He opened a channel not to a EGIS, but to Earth. He didn't know if it would get through, but he tried. If anyone hears this, tell them we didn't do this for glory. We did it because it was right. Tell them peace is worth fighting for, but never become the monster you fight. Then he cut the signal. He aimed the vigil straight at the glowing core of the Black Sun ship. Engines screamed. Metal groaned. He flew faster, faster past enemy fire, past warning alarms, past fear. Inside the weapons chamber, the energy was blinding. Time seemed to slow. Elias thought of Proxima Theta, of the toy dog in the ash, of the Lumines singing in the storm, of the boy in Nairobi holding up a drawing. He smiled. Then he hit the final switch. The vigil exploded not with fire, but with a wave of pure white light. It tore through the containment field like paper. The Black Sun weapon cracked open. Energy spiraled back into itself, collapsing inward. The Valnari ship vanished in a flash, so bright it lit up the entire nebula dot, then Dash Silence thought the battle was over. Back on Earth, people looked up. They didn't see the explosion, it was too far. But they felt something. A shift, a weight lifted. Children stopped crying. Adults held each other tighter. No one knew what had happened, but they knew someone had paid the price. In the ruins of Vexor Prime, the captured swarm mine pulsed once, then went still. The war faction collapsed. Without their weapon, without their leaders, the Valnari turned on each other. The civil war began not with fire, but with shame. The Concord could not ignore what had happened. They held a final meeting, not on Seralis, but on Luna, under open skies. One by one, the old members stepped down. The Qatari, the Zentari, even a few Valnari peace-seekers, all agreed. The old way was broken. They formed something new. The New Soul Compact. Not ruled by the oldest, but guided by the wisest. And humanity was not just a member. They were co-founders. Not because they had the biggest fleet, but because they had shown what peace truly meant. On Mars, in a quiet garden built over an old launch pad, a monument rose. Not of metal or stone, but of living crystal that glowed at night. On it was carved one sentence: the commander who chose mercy when vengeance was easier. No name, no title, just truth. Years passed. A small human girl about 8 stood before the monument with a Qatari elder Lyra, now gray and slow, but eyes still bright. Was he really alone? The girl asked. No, Lyra said gently. He had the sleepers. He had friends. He had a whole galaxy that didn't know it needed him. Until he was gone. But why did he do it? The girl asked. Why give his life? Lyra knelt, placing a hand on the crystal. It warmed under her touch. Because some things are worth more than living. Like hope, like peace, like making sure a child on a farm world never has to hear a war alarm. The girl was quiet for a long time. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small robot doggold with one eye missing. She placed it at the base of the monument. Lyra smiled. "Where did you get that?" "My grandma said it was found on Proxima Theta. She kept it all her life. Said it reminded her that even in the worst dark, someone was coming to help." They stood together as the sun set over Mars' red sky. Quiet wind and the soft hum of a galaxy learning how to be kind again. Far out in space, in the cold between stars, the last sleeper ship drifted. A EGIS ran a final check. All systems stable. No orders. No mission. But it did not power down. It waited. Because peace is never finished. It must always be guarded. And somewhere, someday, the galaxy might need a human voice again. So the ship stayed awake. Just in case.